afternoon, everybody. As things are being handed out, we're going to make a start, and I'm delighted to say that it's a student who's going to help us do that. Thank
you. First of all, we'd like to welcome you to the opening leg of the U.S. tour of the Africa-America Connecting Worlds, a multi-series series of lectures and town meetings aimed at informing Americans about the UN Millennium Development Goals and their relevance to both Africa and the United States. The tour, sponsored by the Africa-America Institute, a leading New York-based international education and policy organization, includes visits to universities, chambers of commerce, corporations, and places of worship. Funding for the tour was provided by the United Nations Foundation. We would also like to thank the Africa-America Institute and the government of the student body for their assistance in bringing our featured speakers to ISU. Before introducing our speakers, we would like to invite you to our upcoming lectures. This Sunday, October 30th, we have Senator Chuck Hagel, who will be speaking on foreign policy and economic issues. And the following day, on October 31st, Vandana Shiva will address global justice and human rights from an environmental perspective. And recently rescheduled U.S. Latinos Making It in a Globalized Workforce and Economy by John Koval on Tuesday, November 8th at 7 p.m. in the South Ballroom. And now the introductions. Dr. Romain Murenzi is the Minister of Education, Science and Technology and Scientific Research for the Republic of Rwanda. He will be discussing government policies and development initiatives in education and technology with Dr. Silas Lwakabamba. Okay. He previously served as chair and professor in the Department of Physics at Clark Atlanta University, among his many academic appointments and honors. Dr. Silas Lwakabamba is rector of the Kigali Institute of Science and Technology and Management in Rwanda. He received his doctorate in mechanical engineering from the University of Leeds, England, and was named Dean of Engineering at the University of Dar es Salaam before joining the UN-sponsored African Regional Center for Engineering, Design, and Manufacturing. We also welcome Dr. John Wong, ISU Marketing Professor, and Dr. Nikki Davis, Director of the Center for Technology and Learning and Teaching, to the discussion, which will follow their presentations. And Dr. Davis will moderate the discussion.
Thank you very much indeed. We're going to see if we can get the volume of this microphone up a little bit. But we're going to make a start, first of all, by asking all our panelists, starting with our two distinguished speakers, to tell you a little bit more about themselves and their reasons for being here. They were expecting to do a PowerPoint, so they're now having to move medium, and as a technologist, I know that can be very disruptive. So we will bear with them. You can either use your microphone in front of you, as I understand it, and or stand up and speak. You've also received a couple of handouts, and there's a little CD, which is lovely, that I've left just as you go out here on the table. Don't rush out for it now. Wait and get one as you leave. So, who would like to go first? Thank you.
Just introducing yourself first.
And your background a little bit about why you're here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we speak later.
No, I'm trying to facilitate more session.
Okay. I am Professor Romain Murenzi. I received my bachelor in mathematics from the University of Burundi. Burundi is in the south of Rwanda. Rwanda is in the middle of Africa. At the east, west you have Congo. East you have Uganda. East north you have Uganda. East south you have Tanzania, and in the south you have Burundi. So I was born in Rwanda, but raised in Burundi. Did my bachelor in mathematics, and taught for 3 years in secondary from 82 to 85, and then I received a fellowship to do a PhD in physics. So I did my PhD in physics at the Catholic University of Louvain from 1985 to 1990. And then I taught in Paris, at the University of Paris, for half a year. And then I went down to Toulouse, France, for a postdoc in computation. And then in 1992 I was hired at Clark Atlanta University, where I stayed until 2001, when I was appointed Minister of Education, Science and Technology for Republic of Rwanda. So since then, we have been working on educational policies and also as it relates to the development of Rwanda.
Would you like to say a little bit more about what you would like to tell them while you're here?
While we are here, I'm going to link the vision for Rwanda of becoming a knowledge-based, technology-based economy by 2020, and also link this with the Millennium Development Goals, and also talk about education and how much we have been able to achieve for the last decade and what we intend to do in the next decade and a half.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Cyrus Lwakabamba. I'm proud to be here because my son went to school here as an undergraduate and they also did postgraduate. He finished December, sometime end of last year, in electrical engineering with a master's in electrical engineering. I was proud to come and visit this place quite a number of times whenever I was in the United States. I'm happy to be back here, and I hope this is the start of a long cooperation between ourselves in Rwanda and also the universities in the United States, in particular the Iowa State University of Science and Technology. Now, my background, I was born in Tanzania with a Rwandese parentage. That's why I came to go back to Rwanda. And I went to school in Tanzania up to the end of what we call A-levels, up to the end of 12 years of schooling. It was 12 years, yes. I can't even recall very well, but I think it was 7 plus 4 plus 2, 13 years of schooling. And then I went to UK, United Kingdom. I was given a scholarship to do engineering, mechanical engineering. I did my first degree between 68 and 71. And then I was taken up by the university. They gave me another scholarship to go straight to do my PhD, 71 to the beginning of 75. And then I went back to Tanzania to be involved in starting the Faculty of Engineering of the University of Dar es Salaam. I was there for 10 years, and then came to US as a senior Fulbright fellow with the University of California, Berkeley. I was there for 1.5 years. And then I was picked up by a project under the United Nations called the African Regional Center for Engineering, Design and Manufacturing, where I was involved in training African engineers, giving them different experiences for about a period of 3 months or 6 months in issues of maintenance, in the issues of productivity improvement of industries, and so on and so forth. I was in that project for 12 years, covering literally the whole of Africa. I was based in Nigeria then. At the end of 12 years, I was asked by the Rwanda government, who wanted to start training human resources in the area of science and technology. So they asked me to start the Kigali Institute of Science and Technology, which is now 8 years. So I was the first founder, rector, or the other way here you call them presidents. So I've been involved in that way up to now. I'm going to tell you the challenges we face, what we have been doing, and the challenges we face in trying to build capacities in the area of science and technology in an African setting, and especially in Rwanda. We have done quite well up to now, but we still need a lot of cooperation. We need to cooperate with institutions not only in Africa, but also abroad. This is part of the Millennium Development Goals, that if you really want to advance Africa, you need to cooperate with institutions outside Africa, to learn from them, to exchange your views. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. The wheel has already been discovered. You cannot start discovering and reinventing the wheel. So that's the whole idea, that we want to connect with institutions outside. So I'm going to try and tell you what we do, how we have done it, the challenges we face, and what we expect to do in the future. And I'm very proud to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to briefly introduce myself and then ask my colleague to do the same. In this context, I direct ISU's Centre for Technology and Learning and Teaching, and I'm one of the leaders in our doctoral program for curriculum and instructional technology. And I have a group of my students and colleagues over there on the left. One of the things I've been involved with internationally is about the development of e-learning and distance education, particularly with faculty development. And in a visit to the World Conference on Computers and Education last summer in South Africa, I was gaining yet another perspective on the challenges involved. My presentation was about the benefits and the drawbacks of using technology. A long time ago, I did a study for the US higher education development and wanted to say, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Use technology, that is, in education. It's hard. So I greatly admire your goal to increase the name, to increase the interaction with technology from Rwanda. And I also recognize the enormous challenges that you have in there. And I think one of the reasons there are a number of us from curriculum and instructional technology here is that we feel that we can also benefit with such a partnership. It's a two-way initiative, and so that's one of the things that I would like to say, and that we recognize, actually, here in the US, we suffer from many of the same challenges, but in a very, very different way. So let me hand across to my colleague now from the College of Business.
Thank you. I hope you don't mind if I sit down.
I think that's good.
Because since this is going to be a conversation, my name again is John Wong. I'm on the faculty in the College of Business. My areas of specialization in marketing and international business. I was born and raised in Malaysia, and so you can imagine my first year here in Iowa, where the weather certainly is very different. And trying to explain Malaysia to students in particular, the only way I could explain it is we do have 4 seasons too in Malaysia. It gets hot and hotter, wet and wetter. We're trying to explain the monsoon. My interest in the international business area goes beyond just the standard curriculum research issues on international business. During the major part of the 1990s, I was involved as part of a team from Iowa State University that we had been quite fortunate to receive a sizable grant, about $7.5 million from USAID, to conduct economics management training in Eastern and Central Europe. So I spent a fairly good chunk of the 90s traveling between the States and Czech Republic, Slovakia, Poland, Hungary, and also in Russia. So I have a little bit of a first-hand experience in terms of seeing how USAID projects work, and in a way, perhaps it has really helped and influenced my thinking on issues related to foreign aid that perhaps the resources could be spent quite differently. I'm still trying to figure out why I'm on this panel, because I'm neither in the area of education or technology, and it certainly is a wonderful opportunity and an honor for me to be on the same panel with our distinguished guests. One of the things that I was, when I was invited to participate, I obviously went online and I dug up a lot of information about Rwanda. I'm not a specialist in African issues, though coming from a former British Crown colony in Malaysia, so I have some affinities to the colonial legacy, that Africans experience as we experienced also when I was growing up in Malaysia. One of the documents that I dug up, among many from the United Nations, World Bank, and various different agencies engaged in aid work and so on, is a document prepared by the Rwandan government called the Poverty Reduction and Sustainable Growth document, and it lists a fairly comprehensive scope of issues and that the government needs to work on in terms of economic development. when I perused this list, one of the things that really jumped at me, and perhaps this is part of my training, is that there are a lot of things at a macro level dealing with increasing incomes, employment, labor productivity, rural recapitalization, and so on and so forth. One issue I perhaps like to throw out, particularly to the students here, and that deals with the gender issues with regards to economic development, particularly this whole area of micro entrepreneurialism, which I think has some merit, which we have seen various different models, and obviously the most famous of which is the Grameen Bank model that Muhammad Yunus, in Bangladesh had begun. And there are various different types of entrepreneurial type programs that involve women. And given the recent history in Rwanda, particularly after the crisis of the 90s, that there are a lot of single parent families headed by women, and that perhaps the role of women in economic development, generally speaking, I think has been overlooked. And perhaps this is one issue that we could if there's interest to pursue. And the other one too is that particularly for our students, there are lots of opportunities to get involved in programs like this. And just to single one of them is in the engineering college, there's a group of students called Engineers for a Sustainable World, where students actually raise funds and they go to developing countries to work on projects. And they've been to Thailand and various places. In fact, right now I think they're also investigating opportunities in Uganda. So just because you're a student doesn't mean that there aren't opportunities for you to be involved. And particularly with the two professors here, I think it's just wonderful that if you've got questions pertaining to possibilities in this area, that you would consult with them. Thank you.
Next, I'm going to ask the Minister to tell us a little bit more about the Millennium Development Goals and how we in ISU might be able to partner with Rwanda.
Thank you, Professor. In 2000, as the world was discussing at the UN how to reduce the poverty in the world, how to move the world toward a better sharing of the knowledge and the world economy, they're putting up the Millennium Development Goals. In Rwanda, actually, under the auspices of the President's office, they were working on what is called now the Vision 2020. Rwanda would like to have a knowledge-based economy, technology-based economy by 2020. In that regard, education, human resource development, in particular education, but also science, technology, and innovation becomes a key pillar to achieve this agenda. At the same time, also, if you look at the Millennium Development Goals as they are set, they will help us, in particular for Rwanda, to achieve our vision. So coming back to what Rwanda is after the genocide, after having lost so many people, but at the same time realizing that the only resource that we have is it's our people. That's where we focus actually on education. From the word of the President, I'm going to cite to do the citation, and then from there you will see how Rwanda wants to move very seriously in that orientation. He said we will continue to invest in our people, so the issue of human resource development. And we will strive to open up the frontier of science, technology, and research as we broaden our trade links with our neighboring countries and beyond. Very powerful statement for a president for a poor country like Rwanda. Long-term vision. Coming back now to the Millennium Development Goal, these goals, as they are set, eradicate extreme hunger, extreme poverty and hunger. In a country where you don't have access to water, water becomes a key actually. Water will help you to do irrigation. If you don't have water, you cannot irrigate. If you don't have water, you have the issue of sanitation. Just think a little bit when you have spent a day in a plane and you arrive home. If you cannot take a shower, can you really eat and sleep? And consider people who can spend actually a week, 2 weeks without taking a shower. How can you live in that situation? Achieve universal primary education. you understand that the leaders of 2020, the workforce, even in this country here, are the children in primary now. So somebody who's not, who's missing primary, who's at the age of being primary, who's in primary now, for him, this century is lost, actually, for him. Promote gender equity, as the professor said, promote gender equality and women empowerment. This becomes very, very important also. It is said if you educate a man, you educate an individual, but if you educate a woman, you educate a society. So definitely, after the genocide in Rwanda, 65% of the households actually were led by women, and the majority of the population in Rwanda are women. So definitely, the issue of promoting gender equity, in particular, even gender equity in the government, becomes very, very important. Reduce child mortality, improve maternal health, combat HIV. Although these are may seem to be just goals, but these goals, if you look at them really, you cannot really achieve them if you don't have science. The issue of science, the issue of hygiene. Even if you go in a remote health clinic, you need a microscope. If you want to know if somebody has malaria, somebody has worms, but you need to do the measurement. So this becomes very, very important. The issue of HIV, monitoring HIV, for example, in Rwanda, we are monitoring all our HIV patients through technology. Ensure environmental sustainability. The issue of energy in the world now is very important. If you don't have access to energy, actually we are going to wipe up your trees. This is what's happening in Rwanda. This is what Professor Makamba, I think, will come back with the issue of biodigester, the issue of alternative energy. How can you use other type of energy rather than just using the wood? Because if you use the wood, actually you are depleting your forest, and then by next time you realize that you are becoming actually a desert, which is what is happening in Rwanda. We are trying to change that. And then development, a global partnership for development. This is what AI, the African American Institute, is doing. This actually we are doing by touring the country here, trying to foster, trying to do partnership. So definitely, with all that, how do you achieve them? What is your base now? What is your base for the next 10 to 15 years? If you look back in 1994, when Rwanda, after the genocide, actually, we decided that education is a key for development. So primary education, 940,000 children in primary. A decade later, we have 1.9 million. This means that the children in primary, the enrollment has doubled. We have the highest enrollment in sub-Saharan Africa and in low-income countries. 90% of net enrollment. This means the children who are at the age of being in school, and those who are in school at a particular age, is 93%. On a population of 8 million. So 2 million in primary, close to 2 million, on a population of 8 million. Secondary education went from 50,000 to 250,000. Although the enrollment seemed to be low, actually it went 5-time increase. Higher education went 8-time increase, from 3,000 to 25,000. Although all our higher education institutions, the total is the number of the students in this institution, actually we went a tremendous expansion. Before the genocide, actually, Rwanda graduated only 2,000 graduates on a period of 3 decades. After the genocide, we have multiplied by 6 the number of graduates. Although we like actually to go to an enrollment of 100,000, that's where technology becomes very important. Now, if you look now, what is the hope for Rwanda now? We have in school, actually close to 30% of the Rwandese population is in school now. If you look in 2015, 2020, the population in school now is going to be the workforce. In particular, the population in primary. So what kind of education are we going to give to these children? What happened in 1994 was the lack of education in most people. The lack of, I may say, critical thinking. So we have adopted a national science and technology policy now where knowledge acquisition is integrated, science integration from primary to higher education. What kind of science in primary? What kind of science in secondary? And in particular, what kind of education in particular as it related to critical thinking, as it related to human right development, human right education, peace education, so that those children who are in primary now, when they become the workforce, when they become the taxpayers, actually we have a sustainable government, a workforce that is actually can compete in the global world. Now in Rwanda, as we developing this science and technology policy in order to achieve the goals that we have set and set by the international community, in particular, I can give you an example. Rwanda wants to be a hub for technology. By the end of the year, all secondary schools in Rwanda will have 10 to 20 computers with wireless, with a broadband, wireless, and fiber optic connectivity. When this is done, every secondary school will be a telecenter or an access point to roll out the technology in the rural area. By 2006, by December, when this is done, the 250,000 children in secondary youth will have access. Let's say if one of them has 100 email, or access, send 100 email send 100 email or email to 100 people, that will give you actually an access to 25 million. That will change dramatically the way we do business. But at the same time, Rwanda is winding up in terms of broadband, in terms of fiber optic, to be able to be the hub to connect Congo, to connect southern Uganda, to connect Burundi, to connect northern Tanzania. And if this is done, Rwanda will have the lowest telecommunication infrastructure in the sub-Saharan Africa, except South Africa, and it will be the most wired country. So with that, we believe we'll be able to have the tools to be able to achieve our goals. Thank you.
That's extremely impressive, isn't it? There are many questions from there, but before I put it out to our audience here, would you like to tell us a little bit about how the Kigali Institute fits in here?
If you allow me to stand, because I can't see some of the people. Thank you very much. As the minister said, Rwanda is a very small country, the size of Maryland. But the population is very high, about 8 million people. The population growth rate is very high, 3%. And we are told that by the year 2020, the population would have doubled. Presently, we have got a very high density of about 400 people. To some areas, 1,000 people per square kilometer. Very high density. What will happen when the population double and the land has not doubled? Becomes a crisis. Now, 91% of our people depend on agriculture, subsistence agriculture. You can imagine the pressure on the land if you don't do anything. So you have to have an exit strategy. An exit strategy which uses science and technology to remove the pressure from the land. Presently, 91% of the people depend on agriculture. 7% are in the service sector, and 2% are in the industrial sector. The 9% of the service sector and industrial sector contribute as much to the economy as the 91% of the agriculture. That's why the government came out deliberately to try and increase the service sector by using science and technology to cut the people from the cycle of poverty and so on. We still have a lot of challenges. Historically, Rwanda passed through a lot of crises, killings which started in 1959, continued in 1973, and culminated to a genocide in 1994, where literally, the targets were the educated people. Either you are educated and you are killed, or you are involved in the genocide itself, you run out. So the country was faced by a crisis. No human resources of any kind. So the government had to come out and do something drastic. That's why they came up with a suggestion that we take over the military training barracks and gave it to us to start an Institute of Science and Technology. This was done in 1997. I was appointed as the first head to handle that. When the institution was given to us, we were given 2 months to start an institute. Within that 2 months, we managed to adapt the buildings of the barracks to an institute, and we started 209 students. Eventually, there was pressure because access to higher education then was even less than 0.1% of people who could access to higher education. You can imagine there was a lot of returnees, and the people who were there had not gone to school. So we were told that the next year take 600, but we realized even the 600 don't make a difference. Access, as I said, was 0.1%. You can imagine the average for Africa, access by that time was 4%. The average in Europe is 50%. In South Africa, it's actually 15%. In America, access to higher education goes up to 80%, somewhere like in California. So we were faced with a big challenge of what to do. So we had to start thinking of an innovative way of increasing access. We started part-time courses. We started distance education through the Africa Virtual University and connecting to different institutions around the world. And that's why you are here, and we can discuss what you have been doing in those areas. Eventually now, we've got on 3,500 students in our institution. We are doing management. Half of the students were doing management. But the government realized that, look, let us concentrate in the area of science and technology. They moved management. January next year, the management will move out to another institution. We were tasked to concentrate and expand the area of training in the area of science and technology. So when we started, the government insisted in a number of ways. Number one, because Rwanda is bilingual, they said that all students who pass through the institution should be able to speak English and French adequately. And that's why you can connect through the word very easily. Because when you know both languages, and our students, by the end of the day, they can speak. Because 90% actually have Francophone background, and 10% have got Anglophone background, and they learn easily the other language. So when they finish, they can speak the two languages. The other side is that all our students have got to have computer skills. We have to make sure that all our students have computer skills because they know what is the use of ICT now is in the world. All our students have to have practical training and workshops. Because I can see there are quite a number of African students here, I went to do a degree in England. When I went to do a mechanical engineering degree in England, I never even touched a screwdriver in my life. I had students in the UK who had been growing up playing with old cars, playing with old motorcycles. They know how the engine works. I didn't know. And this is a challenge we face when we are teaching engineering education in Africa. I keep giving an example that the best my dad could have would have been a bicycle. And when the bicycle breaks down, he will never allow you to touch it. So you grow up without using your hands. So we insisted that we have to have students who pass through workshops, first year and second year, and so that they can learn how to use their hands. At the same time, if someone cannot continue, he has got some skills, either carpentry skills, welding skills, or whatever, and can continue to generate income for himself and his family. Thirdly, the government insisted that at the end of the third year, the students have to go to the communities. They spend 4 weeks at the end of their third year in the communities to look at the problems affecting the communities. There's water problem, there's energy problem, there's housing problems, there's food processing problems. If you look at Africa, in all, mostly, it's only 40% of the people access good water. And 80% of the diseases are waterborne. You can imagine the impact you can have on the health of the people. You can imagine the impact you can have on the poverty of the people if you increase the amount of people who access good water. And you don't need a rocket scientist to do such things. To increase water access, rainwater harvesting is one of the things. Can you imagine people walking in the rain to fetch water? While you can use simple gutters and simple technologies to tap the rain, to harvest the rain, so that you can use the water during your life when there's a dry season. Other things, simple filters. You can use slow sand filters, different sizes of sand in a filter, and you can filter that water into good water. Again, these are the skills you have to pass to the people. Our students have to know how to pass those skills. Pumping. There are these pumps which uses pressure of water, stream water, and they pump water up. You can do that to provide that type of things. If you look at energy, 90% of the people in Africa, especially, as I know in Rwanda, use wood for cooking and lighting. The forests, because of the density of the people in Rwanda, the forests are shrinking very heavily. And this has a catastrophic effect on the environment. So you need to think of solutions. What you can do to the people. Efficient cook stoves. Affordable, efficient cook stoves. You need to think of alternative energy sources. Can you use biogas? Can you use solar cookers? Very simple solar cooker are made of cardboard and aluminum foil, costs about $2. It works. I've seen it, and our students have done those type of training in the rural areas. Rocket stoves, which use simple, very efficiently the wood, which can be used. So energy also becomes very critical. Not only that, but also you can go to a commercial energy, and you go to mini hydro and micro hydro. We can never expect that the grid, national grid, will reach every village in Rwanda. But because Rwanda has got a lot of streams, you can turn it into a simple micro hydro of 30 kilowatts, 20 kilowatts, 30 kilowatts, and you can supply electricity to a small rural area. And to do that, it doesn't cost much. It costs about $60,000 to put up 15 kilowatts of mini hydro. So these are alternative things which you have to do. Low-cost housing. Can you imagine students studying under a tree in primary schools? They study under a tree. They don't have classrooms. But you can use your know-how to put up low-cost housings, which cost about 1/10 of the cost of a normal classrooms. Again, it can be done. We have done it, and this is what we continue to do, so that we can now cover that type of areas. So community attachment of our students makes a lot of difference. They come and suggest a solution. Otherwise, we do it through our Center for Innovation Technology Transfer. We have done quite a bit of this, and we have managed to get a lot of prizes in terms of energy supply. We did a biogas systems the other day, and then we got for converting the human waste from the prisoners and turning it into gas, and we got an international prize in London. We did that one before for a bread oven, which is one piece of wood to cook bread oven, and so on and so forth. So a lot of innovations have to be done, and so on and so forth. But we face a lot of challenges of training our staff, challenges of having quality education, and so on and so forth. So I don't want to go into too much details. I can see people want me to move from the rostrum, so I will move. Maybe you might have some questions which you want to ask me. Thank you very much.
Plenty of ideas for us, as I said here, as well as amazing innovation in Rwanda. What I'd like to do now is to throw it open here for some questions, some comments from people here to make it into more of a conversation. I know I've talked to a few of you, and just like to tell you that one of our retired graduates is interested in hearing the students' reaction to the situation in Rwanda and your comments in that area. And also, remembering the film, I know movies are a great way to educate and inform public opinion in the US. What are some of you will have seen the film shown earlier on this week. I should call it a movie. And there may be some reactions there that also inform your questions here. So, just hand up or something. Thank you. Come to the microphone, please. That would be great. If you'd give us your name and where you're from first, that would be great. That's it.
Yeah, my name is Moretsi Tovera. I'm from Botswana. I've heard Professor Wakahamba. He talked about a number of local innovations that they do, which is very impressive, using local resources to innovate some new ideas. I haven't heard him though talk about production innovation. You haven't talked about agriculture. Well, you said you have the system in place, is subsistence. It's a livelihood for the local population. But what about agricultural education? Is there any in the university? Or if there's none, how far up the ladder of education do the youth start learning about agriculture and production methods? That was my question.
Would you like to answer that briefly?
Maybe we could do a few questions.
Okay, let's grab a few.
Otherwise it's
yes, that's a good idea. Could we grab another question here? We have a Rwandan in the Human-Computer Interaction Program who's unable to be here. I know there's a number of people who would like to have been here. And so a colleague of that student is going to ask her question for her.
Hi, I'm Michelle Rush. I'm a representative of the Human-Computer Interaction Program, like she said. And I'm here representing Kleber. I can't pronounce his last name, so I apologize. Had Kamana, and he's one of our Rwandan students, the doctoral student, and he had a lot of questions in response to training and like your faculty that you bring into your program, specifically at KISS today. If they come out of an environment where they are not maybe essentially computer literate, or are they maybe more computer literate because they haven't had accessibility to computers in their background, what is your remedy to approach that challenge?
That's a great question. So, and I think we could possibly broaden that to teachers for primary and secondary education. How are you managing to do such an amazing job there, given the lack of human capital that you start with? Another question? Thank you.
My question is about curriculum. My name is Nsemakweli. I come from Rwanda, and I'm a student here. My question is about curriculum. The kind of curriculum that is used in most developing countries, including Africa or Sub-Saharan.
What is your major?
Sorry?
What is your major?
What is your major, please?
Agriculture education. The kind of curriculum that we use back home was developed probably 4 or 5 decades ago. And technology is changing, the world is changing. So I don't know what the Ministry of Education is trying to do to make sure that the curriculum is based on the new environment or the new systems that are changing.
That's great, thank
Because
you.
there is a lot of enrollment, but then we have to care about what is the content that is taught to these students. Thank you.
That's one for you. Another one, Wensha?
My question is about funds and educational freedom. At the back of the brochure, the African American Institute, they listed the departments who donated the funds to this African American Institute. My question is, well, when you get into details, go through this organization who donates, you could notice that they have very big companies like Citigroup, or big departments like the United States Department of Education. So my question is, how could your organization best make use of the funds while maintain academic freedom and maintain the policy that work for you best, not to...
Rather than your funding agencies?
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Right. Wensha, would you like to just introduce yourself quickly?
Oh, yes. My name is Wensha. Originally, I'm from China. I'm a PhD student in instructional technology. I'm a student of Dr. Nikki Davis.
And she also works in Extension here, so that links in there. One final question, if there is one. Otherwise, I'm going to pass this back for responses. Okay. Minister, would you like to start with a response?
I would like to thank you. From the first student, the issue of agricultural education. We have an institute which is in the province, in Ruhengeri, the Institute of Agriculture and Animal Husbandry. But also we have the faculty or the School of Agriculture at the National University of Rwanda, and we have also the Institute of Agricultural Research. So actually what we are trying to do is to see how what is done in school can be extended to the farmers, the issue of extension. The professor is talking about the issue of community attachment. So we are trying to do the same in agriculture. Claver Hategekimana, the issue of training. Actually, if you, let's say now in secondary school, we have already started to roll out the computers in the schools. We have Rwanda being small, It's easy. We have 500 secondary schools. So we have when I left home, we had already distributed to 150 schools. So the challenge more is going to be on the issue of electricity and the issue of to connect. But we will be working on that. But also the issue now of teacher training. Are the teacher going to be able to have access to know how to use the computers before we start in 2006 in January? Through a partnership between Microsoft, Cisco, we are going to start a training program for 3,000 teachers during the vacation. For our school year starts in January and ends in October. So January, February, we're going to do training. We have 8,000 teachers. We're going to start with 3,000, and we'll continue next year. But also, we have already started also to put computers in primary. Every primary school will have what we call a science corner. We request, as part of developing science in primary, they give us a room. We will put things like posters on for example, a poster on the cycle of life, a poster on planet, a poster on dinosaur, a poster on air, on energy, on the environment, on maize, or human body, etc. But also we put some computers in the room. So that also will be done. We gave us 5 years to complete all the 2,200 primary schools. So the secondary school will be done by next year. At the same time, we are starting with the secondary school, and the teachers will be actually trained at the same time. But what we want to do actually is to use the school as through distance education for the teachers. So our teachers in primary education, because of our history, have a high school degree. So what we want is through distance education for them to be able to get a degree. The issue of agriculture, the issue of curriculum, the issue of content. Of course, the first thing that we did was the issue of enrollment. You understand, if we had not put 1 million children in primary now, we will be having 1 million street children. If you have 1 million street children with 100 districts, you could have 10,000 street children in every district. You cannot govern that country. So the issue actually of enrollment in primary is part of the poverty alleviation, part of governance actually. You cannot govern the country when you have 1 million children in the street. So definitely, but for the curriculum actually we have a national curriculum development center, and we are working to revise most of the curriculum, in particular also about science, technology, of course, but also we are working on the issue of peace education. Peace education is being integrated. Peace education, human rights, is being integrated across the curriculum. For example, when you are learning French or English, actually you can use those sentences that talk about human rights, talk about peace education. AAI, they receive money. That's probably the Austin Cooper could elaborate on that. I've been a researcher in the U.S. for close to a decade, where we received money from the army, but it does not mean that you cannot be independent in your research. So this depends on the person, etc. But depending also, or if you do research, what kind of orientation you have when you receive the funding. But I don't think that if you look even in the United States, there is a lot of money coming from the government. But it does not mean that professors don't have academic freedom. Thank you.
Now, unfortunately, we're coming to the end of the time and students are needing to rush off to class. We're hoping that you're leaving behind your surveys, or somebody's grabbing them at the door. We're very much looking forward to your feedback. It's an important part of the tour to get that feedback, to be able to tell the sponsors how valuable it's been or not, and to improve things. I'd like to thank our speakers and to apologise for the fact that we've run out of time before we can hear more. I know this is a conversation that could last much, much longer, and I'd like you to join me in thanking everybody. Oh, am I stopping us short?
No, it's okay. It's okay.
No, what does it say there? Yeah. Okay. Do people have time to stay till 2? Have some people got that on their calendar? Because we could continue. We'd be very happy to continue. Okay. It's fine? Okay, let's continue then. That's wonderful. We can't understand those that have to leave, but I'm very happy to stay. I'd like to give you a chance then to talk on the other side of things, that maybe give your response to those questions, and then we'll open it up to another round of questions. Would you be happy to do that? What do you think we've all covered?
I think the Minister has covered all the points, except that the issue of teacher education and ICT, that we are already training a lot of teachers. We had a project which was floated by the Rwanda Information Technology Agency, and also the Development Gateway Foundation. And we have been training a lot of teachers in the area of ICT, training for those teachers who are in the primary, secondary, and so on. The other day, we graduated over 400 teachers. And this is going on. Obviously, Microsoft and has come in now to try and assist to train more teachers. And they will be trained, actually, most of them will be trained at my institute. So the training goes on, the capacity building goes on, and so on and so forth. And one thing which is very critical is that we realize that since the government is putting up so much infrastructure and so much programs in ICT, they don't have enough human resources. We agreed with the Department for International Development in the UK, DFID, to train technicians, about 200 technicians who are going to man the infrastructure. So we advertised and we took people, especially these guys who are coming out of secondary schools and don't go to higher education. We give them 4 months modules, a module on software management, a module on networking, and a module on hardware maintenance. We got a lot of response. We were targeting about 250 students for the project, but eventually now we're going over 1,000 students. And they don't only come from Rwanda, but they come from surrounding countries like Burundi, DRC Congo, Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, and as far as Cameroon and Nigeria. So we do quite a lot of training for these guys to give them skills so that they can go out and man some of these ICT infrastructures. And this way you really cover the issue of poverty, because quite a lot of these guys will be unemployed. But if you give them skills to maintain computers or electronics equipment, it makes a lot of difference for him or her. And this is something which is very, very popular, and we have done it quite well, and I think we are going to continue doing it that way. Otherwise, I think the other points, the Minister had covered them. Thanks.
I have a question, but let me throw it open to our audience first. I think we had one from Audrey Bowser-Brown. Would you like to go to the microphone?
Good evening, I'm Audrey Bowser-Brown. I'm a student here at Iowa State in Curriculum and Instruction. I would like for you to address the issue of the lack of computing infrastructure, as well as ways in which you plan to empower females to participate in your Millennium Development Goals.
Okay. Other questions? Thank you.
Oh yes, my name is Ryan Gertz. I'm a graduate student here in our electrical engineering program. Now you both mentioned a partnership with Microsoft for training. I would assume that this means that on most of the computers that you're sending out to the primary schools, you'll be utilizing Microsoft Windows as a primary operating system. This can be very expensive. I know nearly half the cost of the computer in many cases. Has the government looked into using free and open source alternative operating systems to cut down on the price?
That's a good question. We'll discuss that one.
My name is Cristina Michelini. I'm originally from Brazil, and and I work for Center of Technology, Learning and Teaching. And one thing that I think it's great to think that teachers are being trained. You have technicians to take care of the technical issues. But one thing that we face in this country is that although teachers are trained, they are not trained enough to make an integration with the curriculum. And they start using technology just for the technology's sake.
Also, sometimes the training is not at the extended period that give them confidence in what they are doing, so they start taking control, but not leading the kids to use them for their own sake. So I just would like to know if you are aware of those things and you are dealing with, thinking about dealing with those issues, because if we don't empower the kids in a way that they can be part of the decision making and all that, might be a problem that we face here and we face in other developed countries.
Thank you.
My name is Kiva. I come from Botswana. I'm in agriculture education. I have a question concerning the farming in Rwanda. You talked about 91% of the population of Rwanda being engaged in agriculture and special subsistence farming, but you have not talked more about the extension education, what the government is doing as far as extension education is concerned, because what is important is people to know more about how to use those trees that they are cutting down. If they don't have the education, then it's pointless to talk about agriculture in a country like Rwanda. I look at the population of Rwanda to be very big, and as compared to my own country, which is very big, but with only 1.6 million people.
Thank you. And these contextualized questions are really helpful. Thank you. Okay. Minister, may I ask you to answer some of these again? Thank you.
And the Professor will help me. Empowerment of women. Actually, as part of our constitution, we made sure that there is inclusiveness in the constitution. So the issue of check and balance, in particular, the women are captured in the constitution. The 30% minimum in the leadership, 30% have to be women. In the cabinet, 30% of the ministers are women. In the parliament, 30% of the seats are reserved to women, so they can compete among themselves, and then the other they can compete with men on the other 70%. So 49% of the member of the parliament are women. In the Senate, more than 30%. Also in the leadership, they make sure that at least the 4 top leaders, one have to be women. So the president of the Supreme Court is a woman. So we have the other 3 men but it is in the constitution. That actually makes the difference. When the children, the young women, the girls, they see these people on TV, the decision makers, it makes the difference. It makes the difference for them. Now, in education, we have already actually achieved one of the Millennium Development Goals, which correspond to the gender equity in education. We have more girls than boys in primary education. The education for all targets also is the same. They asked to have gender equity by 2015. But the problem that we are facing for women, it's the upper level of education. When they go to secondary, actually you have more girls in private schools that are not better than the public schools that are better than the private school. Public schools are better than the private schools. And of course, when they do the national examination to enter the university, you have less girls than boys, and you have less girls in sciences. But we are working very seriously to change that. Actually, by 2010, we would like really to see the university, a public university, go above 40% of enrollment. I think at KISS they have already 20% of women at the university. The student from electrical engineering, free software versus commercial software. Actually, the Rwandan Information Technology Authority or agency, they are looking into that. But what we received from Microsoft was the Microsoft Office we received for $3 per computer. So they reduced dramatically. But we realized that is going to cost more money. So we are going to have also an alternative, commercial versus non-commercial. At the same time, also you want